Meeseeks has been one of the most interesting characters in the whole show. They made their debut in the 5th episode of the first season and played antagonists. Ever since that episode, they have become one of the fan-favorite characters. Unfortunately, despite their popularity, the series didn't really explore them as much as I wished. However, additional materials such as comics and the official characters guidebook revealed a lot of interesting information about them, and I want to talk about it. But before I start, if you like this kind of content about various cartoons and shows, make sure to turn on the notifications button so you don't miss any new videos. Let's start with their design. Mr. Meeseeks is a tall, powder blue humanoid figure with elongated, narrow limbs. He has a large, bulbous head, beady black eyes, and a giant mouth that stretches across his face. He has a very high-pitched and strident voice, sometimes intoning in screeches. Some versions of him have one or more small patches of orange hair on their heads. After being alive for more than several days, Mr. Meeseeks' skin will begin to develop discolored lesions accompanied by random tufts of dark quill-like hairs. This is what an official character guidebook published by Dark Horse Comics has to say about Mr. Meeseeks. Summoned into being for the purpose of completing a specific task, Meeseeks are rewarded for their trials by instant combustion, followed by what one can only assume is ascension to a glorious and orgastic afterlife. Existence is pain to a Meeseeks, as the sooner they complete their task, the sooner they can leave behind the cruel limitations of the physical realm. Some speculate that Meeseeks are crossing over from one plane of reality to another, with their summons and perform tasks representing a cosmic toll. They believe one day the box will stop working and the Meeseeks will run out, having all crossed over and become God. No way to know if it's true or false. Anyway, Meeseeks can come in a variety of flavors. We learned so much about Mr. Meeseeks with this one. It seems even the Galactic Federation was interested in them. Also, the fact that the Galactic Federation assumes that they are becoming God after death really makes me question, what do they mean by becoming a god? Do they literally become gods of certain universes, or do they transform into divine beings? I really hope that we will someday see these ascended Meeseeks in the series. This looks like a very interesting concept. Also, the text says that they are summoned via box. From where are they summoned? Is there a dimension of Meeseeks where they are a normal society waiting to be summoned so they can reach heaven and ascension? They are truly incredible beings that did not get enough screen time in the series. However, fortunately, they got fairly decent time in the comics, and now I want to talk about them. In the 19th chapter of the original Rick and Morty comic series, Rick decides to use these Meeseeks as drug mules for his smuggling ring. Since they vanish once their job is done, Rick believes he can avoid detection and getting caught. However, things don't go as planned, and one of the Meeseeks gets caught and is thrown in jail before they can complete their delivery. Unlike the other Meeseeks who disappear quickly once their task is done, this Meeseeks is forced to endure an unnaturally eternal life behind bars. Years later, this Meeseeks emerges as Mr. Sick, a completely different entity from his previous self. Mr. Sick is now covered in tattoos and has become a corrupted and vengeful figure. His catchphrase is, "Don't look at me," which is a stark contrast to the iconic Mr. Meeseeks saying. His new identity as Mr. Sick is also an embodiment of the existential terror that he endures every day of his painful existence. Like the Meeseeks that went crazy in their debut episode, Mr. Sick joins a squad whose mission is to kill Rick. While Rick is able to help Mr. Sick complete his revenge, he proves to be one of the greatest enemies Rick has ever faced. Mr. Sick is virtually unstoppable and completely unwilling to compromise, making him all the more terrifying. Despite being the oldest and strongest Meeseeks ever to exist, Mr. Sick still holds on to the same beliefs as the other Meeseeks, that by killing their summoner, they too can find bliss in oblivion. Through Mr. Sick's character, the series continues to explore existential quandaries, highlighting the complex themes that have made Rick and Morty such a beloved cultural phenomenon. Mr. Sick is not the only interesting Meeseeks that has appeared in the Rick and Morty comics. Two of them even got their own full chapter in the Rick and Morty Presents comic series. The name of the comics is Rick and Morty Presents Mr. Meeseeks. The chapter starts with Summer Smith, who decided to cook a fancy 6-hour chili recipe from France, but she becomes easily irritated and decides to summon a Mr. Meeseeks who was tasked to stir every 20 minutes for the next 6 hours. He became extremely excited and said that Meeseeks live for this kind of thing, which was noted by Summer to be the saddest thing that she has ever heard. Since life is too short for meaningless tasks, and it is so rich and wonderful and full of surprises, this makes Meeseeks wonder how people find meaning in life. While asking himself that, he accidentally summons new Meeseeks who answers him that there is no meaning in life and that it is all just chaos and pain. Surprisingly for him, he did not disappear, even though he supposedly achieved his summoner's wish. The reason for his lack of disappearance turned out to be that his answer was not satisfying for summoner Meeseeks, and after the second Meeseeks realized that he has to figure out the meaning of life, he became extremely extremely irritated and decided to look for an answer online. He was telling him some random boomer quotes about life to him, such as life is not about waiting for storms to pass, it's about learning to dance in the rain. The first Meeseeks is extremely dissatisfied by his answers and felt like the second one wasn't even trying. The second Meeseeks explains to him that he doesn't know either. Seems these are from a tab on Jerry's computer marked as inspirations. Let's be honest, this is such a Jerry moment. He then says how humanity is chaotic and miserable, and he questions how does anyone find purpose in this world. And then, after he asked this question, the best ever character in the whole show makes his debut in the chapter, and this character is none other than Butterbot. He says that he knows his purpose, which is to pass the butter. Second Meeseeks does what Butterbot told him, but it did not change anything, and the first Meeseeks was even more dissatisfied, which was agreed by Purpose Robot. He then decided to unalive himself by jumping from the table. The second Meeseeks remarks how similar he is to their species, but unfortunately the robot couldn't achieve his goal and disappointingly says that he still functions. This was the final straw for the second Meeseeks, who loses his cool and is extremely irritated by the fact that he has to give another Meeseeks a reason to live. He then remarks that none of their species have ever answered this question. He then mentions how after the first Meeseeks finishes his duty, he will leave him to be stuck on Earth, unable to ever complete his task, to live in an eternity of agony. This is a very interesting piece of information in my opinion. It seems at some point at least several Meeseeks tried to find the meaning of life, but failed, which makes me think that that influenced other Meeseeks to lose any interest in finding a meaning for life, and their desire towards death increased. Also, his second sentence confirmed that Meeseeks are in fact immortals until they fulfill their goal, but immortality comes with the price of them losing their sanity, which leaves them in eternal agony. They are then joined by Rick, who tells them that life has no meaning, but most sentient beings find the raw chaos of existence too existentially terrifying, so they make up some fairy tale to sedate themselves into not thinking about it most of the time, and then remarked how unlucky this Meeseeks was, and offered him his garage to finish his duty since he will absolutely need him. He then sees Butterbot and says that he will fix up, which is then followed by a hopeless no from him. Man, I really feel bad for this little guy. He really does not deserve all of this. Overall, I really like this scene. Even though everyone will eventually die and most people don't leave a mark on history books to be remembered or leave an indelible mark on the ancient universe that came before them and will continue after they die because the universe is so ceaseless and unsympathetic. It's an impossible problem for anyone, especially a Meeseeks. Because of that, they decide to explore the world and to find a meaning for life and take Rick's spaceship. The first Meeseeks tries to stop the second one and explains to him how they aren't born into this world fumbling for meaning like humans. They are created to serve a singular purpose for which they will go to any length to fulfill, and his purpose is nothing more than to stir chili. But the second one quickly dismisses his saying that he was right the first time. Their lives don't have meaning and being alive is terrible. But feeling driven to end it isn't the same thing as having a purpose in life. It seems thinking about the meaning of life made this Meeseeks realize how sad and pathetic their lives are, since afterlife is the only thing that they are trying to attain. He then makes the logical assumption, since helping is what they are naturally drawn to, that maybe they should start searching for the meaning of life from there. They usually help others selfishly to reach the afterlife, but maybe they would feel real fulfillment if they helped someone else altruistically. They then find a homeless person without legs and decided to help him. It was revealed that Pickle Rick was the one who made him without legs. He layered him off at the knees and left him for dead. I wonder if he was one of the foreign agents in the Pickle Rick episode, or if Rick made himself pickle again after that incident. After one Meeseeks tried eating the pickle, it made his post-pickle traumatic stress disorder activate and he became extremely scared. Meeseeks decides to help him by giving him new clothes. They steal clothes and give them to him, but the homeless guy does not take the stolen clothes from him, and he says that he is trying to turn his life around and having stolen stuff would ruin that. The second Meeseeks is very confused about that, since every year hundreds of millions of dollars worth of unsold new clothes are destroyed by their own retailers' buzz, and this homeless guy's decision of not taking them made no sense to him. First Meeseeks tells him that Meeseeks are above that narrow morality, which also expands our knowledge on their species, which means their society is well above our own, since they regard themselves to be higher than our basic structure of morality. They also stole a car and had one hell of a car chase. The second Meeseeks hoped that this kind of experience would make the first one appreciate being alive, but it did not change his view on life either, and he preferred to stir the chili instead of that. Homeless guy makes them realize how selfish they really are and remarks how they always say, "Look at me." This makes everything about themselves. His remark made the first Meeseeks question what the point of their catchphrase is, which is answered by the second one that he assumes that it is a call for their summoners to stay focused so that Meeseeks can finish their tasks and greet death soon. sooner. Homeless Guy then tells them again how their catchphrase is the context of people who will never be happy. They are like sad little nobodies who have nothing real to fill the hole inside of them, and there is so much more to life than that, which for him is simply good times. They then go to good times, make a new female friend who is seen to be with them almost all the time, but it seems she wasn't strong enough physically like them, and they bury her. Homeless Guy still isn't happy and suggests that maybe he shouldn't have turned his back on the church. They then see some religious slogan board and decided to try religion as a search tool for the meaning of life. After they reach it, they are considered aliens, and the priest tells them how they actually aren't happy and been denying themselves pleasure in order to earn their way into the afterlife where they will be happy and fulfilled. This looked awfully similar to Meeseeks' ideology, who later explained to them how afterlife doesn't exist and how species whose scientific capabilities are vastly beyond Earth's only see evidence that the universe is nothing more than a meaningless accident, and delaying your own happiness until an afterlife is like saving a book you really want to read for after you have been shot into the sun. This makes the religious group members extremely depressed, and it changed their view on life forever. After they left the church, they are met by special forces who took them to prison. While in prison, they caused a prison fight and discussed various meanings of life. One of them was love, which was quickly discarded by the first Meeseeks, since half of marriages end in divorce and half of relationships experience infidelity, and those aren't necessarily the exact same 50%. He then questions as to why build your whole sense of self and value around one person when they can just die and leave you alone and no longer whole. He then says something very interesting about his species. According to him, Meeseeks aren't born out of a loving mother or even into a world that nurtures them into understanding. They are manufactured by a machine that is not them, spat into a world that is not theirs to serve creators who parent them, all to perform tasks not to their benefit. It is the loneliest form of slavery, and their bodies were designed to ache and worsen with each passing moment as an incentive to serve their masters faster. They have never been whole. This is very interesting. Does this mean that Meeseeks are created by some kind of machine? What kind of being is strong enough to create this seemingly immortal and overpowered character? What was its point? Hope we will hear about it sooner or later. The first Meeseeks is then offered by the second to experience a life with a family who cared for him and where he belonged. They then go to Blips and Chits and decided to play the Roy game. Unlike Morty's game, it seems this game is now updated so two people can play together. One of them is Roy and another one is a female. It seems the female's purpose is to finally find Roy to make him fall in love with her, so they will find the meaning of life before their death. After finally meeting each other, they quickly fell in love, but it seems Roy cheated on him since he didn't want to be defined by one relationship until his death. This was the turning point for their lives. Roy's life was miserable while hers was going very successfully, but after some time both of them were feeling lonely, which quickly changed after they finally met each other. However, during their date, she died out of nowhere. Unfortunately, due to YouTube's policy, I am unable to show you that page, but trust me, it was very gruesome. Roy was very surprised that they could die in there. Suddenly, they realized that they could die multiple ways, and they were really enjoying that. First Meeseeks was very excited. While they got back, his excitement made the second one annoyed. His annoyance made the first one realize that he was so fixated on the idea of a singular truth that it never occurred to him that each individual might be able to find unique meaning in their own life. This was enough for the second Meeseeks to vanish. While being happy, the first one was still kinda sad because he does not think that the second one believed it himself, and he feared that he made his existence empty, the half-lived shell of a life that they had wished they could break from. This made the first Meeseeks determined to become a new Meeseeks to find a unique meaning of life for himself. He then decided that his purpose was to open other Meeseeks' eyes to how much more there is to explore, and maybe that could be the beginning of a new era for Meeseeks, a game changer for their entire species. However, during this conversation, Summer joins them and remarks how perfect that chili was, which made Meeseeks disappear along with his desire to be the revolutionary Meeseeks. I truly enjoyed reading the comics. It made these characters really relatable for me and showed us a completely different side of them. They weren't just mere tools whose only purpose was to serve their summoner. They became their own characters with their own feelings, goals, and desires. These are extremely interesting characters. I wonder who created their box. The fact that they need to be summoned and fulfill their summoner's wish in order to achieve nirvana makes me think that Meeseeks themselves created that box, which enabled them to easily achieve their desire to attain godhood. But creating such a box looks too difficult for regular Meeseeks, which makes me think that there has to be at least one extremely overpowered Meeseeks, who presumably also rules them, who created that box so his people would reach heaven much more easily. But it begs the question, how did he attain so much power? How do they know what happens after death? And how did the Galactic Federation find out that Meeseeks become gods after death? There is also another theory that since Rick regarded Kirkland versions as off-brand versions of Meeseeks, they can just be created by some company who then sell Meeseeks boxes to their customers. This one also creates a lot of questions, such as who are these beings, who creates Meeseeks, and how much do they cost? Any assumption about their origins right now creates more questions than answers, and right now Meeseeks having a king who created their box is just my assumption, nothing more. What is your opinion of them? Who created their box? What is their origin? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to turn on the notifications button so you don't miss any future videos. Lonnie Brooks out. Bye.